Today I wanted to talk about a childhood favorite of mine. Wave Race 64 is a racing game that takes place on jet skis. It's a pretty simple concept, and I'm sure everyone here has played a racing game of some kind. What puts this game above the competition is the wave part of Wave Race. This game has some amazing water, both visually and mechanically. As a water appreciator myself, I think the physics and graphics on display are still incredible. Visually, this game knocks it out of the park. The dolphin park. You know, like the level dolphin park. Getting the obvious out of the way, the centerpiece is the water. It's both reflective and transparent, and has a glassy look about it. It also comes in a few different shades of color, depending on which track you're on. There's a few grays and blues, and a little bit of orange sprinkled in there. The water itself has surprisingly realistic behavior, with waves and wakes that interact with the environment and the player. The waves have the most variety between levels, ranging from a quiet, tranquil lake to the kind of waves you see on Deadliest Catch or something. This also has gameplay implications, but I'll get to that. One thing that surprised me playing this again was how well the animations also held up. In addition to bobbing up and down with the waves, the drivers will really lean into the turns they take. Your character has different animations depending on where you finish, and the trick animations are really smooth, even if you flub it. And yeah, the character models probably only have like 128 triangles between the four of them, but if it means having animations in water that look this good, I think it's worth it. That's not to say the characters look bad, they're distinct, bright, and colorful. Speaking of colorful, the track architecture also looks good. There's usually not a lot of details in the environments, but they match the watercolors and the wave intensity perfectly. Like I said earlier, the water is the star of the show, so don't expect much outside of it. Especially the stands full of cardboard cutouts watching you. Unlike the crowds, the music is very appealing here. It adds a ton to the feel of the game, and makes it more lighthearted. The soundtrack uses a lot of MIDI bass and guitar synths, and it reminded me a lot of the Mario Kart 64 soundtrack. My favorite piece of music is the one found on Drake Lake, but they're all really solid. It reminds me a bit of the Wii Sports soundtrack as well, which isn't surprising since it was done by the same composer. He also apparently voices Yoshi, but that's a whole other can of worms. Anyway, I'd recommend giving it a listen. Looking at the sound effects, they're alright. The one that lives in my brain is the one where you miss a buoy and it makes that noise. The rest are pretty forgettable, but they're at least fitting. There's also some minimal voice acting, done almost entirely by the race announcer. He can come off as a little too upbeat, but he's alright. What am I thinking? What are you thinking? I'm trying to win. What do you aside from that and the soundtrack, there's not much in the way of audio. Playing the game has more nuance than you might be led to believe at first glance. Let's start with something basic, like turning. In most other racing games, you just hold down the brake or the accelerator and hit the corner. In Wave Race, you'll only go the direction you're leaning if you're on the water. If you get launched up by a wave, which happens often, you can lean, but you're only going to start turning when you hit the water. The courses are wide enough so that turning real hard all the time isn't something you would normally have to worry about. But the races here aren't so simple. In addition to just trying to be first, you also have to complete a sort of water slalom the whole way. Passing these buoys will increase your speed, but miss one and your speed will drop back down to the bottom. Miss 5 and you're done. So, when you're turning, you need to make sure whatever route you're taking doesn't make things worse for you. You're not so much racing the others as you are trying to get the best line possible. This is where the choice in difficulty comes in. On higher difficulties, the AI will naturally be better, but the courses will also become more technically challenging, with some spots even getting new obstacles like these landmines, or this ramp getting moved back to make a shortcut harder. It is a step up from just making the AI faster, although I'm sure that's still happening here. Speaking of dynamic courses, some tracks will change as you progress. Some changes are small and don't really affect anything, like the fog on Drake Lake clearing around a minute in. Other tracks have more significant changes, like the tide going out in Southern Island, which changes what routes you can take. These dynamics are few and far between, but they're always welcome. Outside of the races, there's also a vehicle editing system that allows you to change how your sick ride handles. When I used this, it made things worse for me, so I just stuck with normal, but I'm sure someone more smarter than me could figure it out. From the main menu, you have a couple of modes to pick from. There's the races, which come in the form of tournaments, time trials, which are what they sound like, and stunt mode. Stunt mode is kinda just time trials, except you have to get as many points as possible through tricks. It's not really for me. There's also the classic 1v1 split screen mode, which I can only comment on from my vague recollection of playing it around 15 to 20 years ago. It's a 2-player racing mode, so obviously it's fun. Of course, the whole game is fun, especially the championships, but I could feel the expert mode taking years off of my life when I tried to give it a go. This game is an easy recommend, of course, given that the game is very free if you look for it, and it ran fine on my emulator of choice, Project 64. Even if you don't want to play the game, give the soundtrack a listen. It captures what I think this picture sounds like. Thanks for watching. I've got some videos lined up that hopefully you'll like. Captain, I have something for the log. I believe our weapons is having a melty.
Yeah, I'm about to go take a captain's log, bro.
I also want to try playing more games that have been recommended to me this year, so keep an eye out for those. Until next time.